So for this particular virus, what makes it so much infective for human beings? Is there
For this particular virus, what makes it so much? That's very, very interesting. It's a very long story, but I will just give you a short answer to this. A virus cannot live by itself. It doesn't have an independent existence. It has to infect somebody and use that somebody's cellular machinery in order to propagate, in order to make multiple copies of itself. And if it makes multiple copies of itself, it can then go and infect another person. Now, so the virus needs to enter humans. In this particular case, SARS-CoV-2, it enters human cells, and then it multiplies within the human cell, and then the human cell at some point of time will burst, and it will release these viruses. These viruses, through our sneezing or whatever, we produce these droplets. These droplets are carried in viruses. Another person, a susceptible person, will inhale the droplet and will get the virus into her or his own body, and there again the same process will start. Now, how does the virus actually get into the cell? So when the virus wants to get into the cell or needs to get into the cell, needs is the wrong word, wants is also the wrong word. For the virus to get into the cell, it needs to first come and attach itself to the human cell. And then it should do something to crack open the cell and get inside. So there are two things involved. One is attachment to the cell membrane of the human host cell, and then somehow penetrate that cell membrane. Every cell has a membrane, penetrate the cell wall and get into the cell. So these are the two major tasks that the virus needs to do. I will tell you just this, that this particular virus uses as a receptor, uses as an anchor, a specific protein that is expressed in huge quantities on the cells of the lung. This protein is also expressed in other cells of other tissues of the body, but it is hugely expressed in cells of the lung, and a particular protein of the virus will come and attach itself very, very efficiently to this hugely expressing protein on the surface of the human lung cells. And that protein is called ACE2, ACE2. And this protein is overexpressed in people who are hypertensive and take what are called ACE inhibitors. So we take these pills. I'm hypertensive. I don't take ACE inhibitors. I take other kinds. But anyway, a large number of people take ACE inhibitors. And when you take these ACE inhibitors, you are actually overexpressing this particular protein called ACE2, which means that you're inviting the viruses, come and lodge on my lung cells, make it easy, you can enter more easily. So this SARS-CoV-2 uses human ACE2 protein as an anchor to come and cling to the host cell, and it is because it uses this protein, and the protein is so easily available, it becomes very efficient to infect humans, to attach itself to the lung cell and then penetrate the lung cell and enter the lung cell and multiply there. So that is what gives it the efficiency. Its ability to use a human protein as an anchor, as a receptor, and an easily available protein as a receptor, and attach itself to the cell wall and get into the cells.
Let us get to another topic which is very recent. We understand that you and Dr. Nidhan Vishwas, you have published a paper regarding the multiple strains and variants of this SARS-CoV-2. Now, I have a basic curiosity. How did you think actually that there can be variations of coronavirus, and particularly this strain of coronavirus?
No, we didn't think about anything. As you know, and we've known each other for some time, as you know, my interest is in analyzing nucleic acid sequences. I have done nucleic acid analysis, sequence analysis for humans, for other animals, and so on. So my main interest is to look at evolution, and evolution manifests itself in changes in the nucleic acid sequence, either the DNA sequence, in this particular case, the RNA sequence of the virus. Nidhan also has very similar interests. So fortunately for this particular virus, when people started sequencing the RNA, and it started from China, they started making the sequence available in the public domain as soon as it was sequenced. So when we were thinking about this, how to study the sequences and the evolution of the virus, a huge data set was already available. And we, both Nidan and myself, like to take an empirical approach to all of this. And so what we did was to download all of those sequences from the public domain database and look at the changes in the RNA sequence and see if we can identify clusters of RNA sequences that are more similar to each other. And that's how we identified that there are not just we, there are other people in the world who have also identified these 11 clusters of similar RNA sequences that we now call as subtypes, of which of these 11, one is the original type, which is the O type, which arose in China, possibly from a bat to a pangolin and then to the human, and that particular type has been renamed as O type. That's the ancestral type. That O type then acquired more mutations, more changes, and the virus evolved. So if you look at the RNA sequences of this particular virus, it falls in, the RNA sequences fall in 10 different clusters or similar sequences, and those similar sequences are called a subtype, and that's how we identified that there are 10 derived subtypes from the original O subtype.
We have heard that you have also mentioned that there is particularly one subtype which is more infective than all others. If you can please kindly elaborate on that, what is that?
Yes. So as we were analyzing this RNA sequences, we were also trying to, normally if you study evolution, evolution is studied on a scale of thousands or millions of years. But in this particular case, because it's a virus, because it's an infective pathogen, it evolves fast, and whatever it does in a very short period of time. So what we are doing is to study the evolution of the virus over a short period of time, almost every day, because the public domain database has the date on which it was sequenced, date on which it was the material was collected, etc. All of that information is available. So we were tracking this RNA sequences by day. So initially we looked at the pool of RNA sequences and identified clusters, which are now called subtypes. But we are also tracking how these different subtypes were evolving on a daily basis. So as we were doing this, we were extremely surprised to see that one particular subtype that we have called A2A is outcompeting the other subtypes and is spreading very, very efficiently and very, very rapidly to all parts of the world. So, and right now today it's over 60% of all infected individuals has A2A, is infected by this subtype called A2A. Now that's very intriguing because you have 10 other subtypes, and it is only one subtype that's infecting most everybody in the world, and that's very intriguing. So that observation was seminal. That observation is what attracted a lot of interest, because this is something that was not expected. Because if you have like in an Olympic race, if you have 10 different participants who are doing a 100-meter sprint, then you don't expect that one person will be the winner all the time. And sometimes it's one person, sometimes in another race it's another person, and so on. Even though usually there is one person who is a little bit more a better sprinter than everybody else, but still, in this particular case, almost every every race that was being participated by 11 different subtypes, the A2A subtype was winning, and it has won 60% of these races that were convened. So that is very intriguing, and so we asked, why is this A2A so efficient? And so we looked at one particular defining mutation of this particular subtype, which changes an amino acid from aspartic acid or aspartate to glycine at amino acid position 614. the coronavirus has a spike protein. The spike protein is actually extremely critical for its entry into the human host cell, and it is in this spike protein that there is a change from aspartate to glycine in the 614 position. So we asked, what does this particular change do to A2A? And again, to cut a long story short, what we've been able to identify is that this particular mutation from aspartic acid to glycine enables the virus to gain entry into the human host cell in a much more efficient manner. And because it is able to gain entry into the human host cell, it's becoming more infective. It's able to infect and transmit with much greater efficiency, outcompeting the other viruses. Incidentally, the ancestral virus is also quite efficient. It does not have this mutation, but it's also quite efficient in infecting, but it has also outcompeted the original O type of coronavirus.